So what is symbiosis?
In gardening, symbiosis is when a plant lives off another plant. It's a symbiotic plant. I'm looking at one, but I don't know the name in New Zealand. So it's when something lives off something else. In healthy child rearing, the mother uses all her 3 ego states to care for the young child. So that means she uses her 3 ego states to look after the young child.
Mm-hmm.
So developmentally, the child ego state is when we're really young. However, in symbiosis, and this is exactly what you felt energetically when we explored your dream the other day,
Mm-hmm.
your mum used 2 of her ego states to care for you. Whoops. Ostensibly. So Eric Berne talked about structural analysis, like what is in the ego states.
Mm-hmm.
And symbiosis is when there's only 3 ego states between the 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody who has cut off their own child ego state, their needs and feelings, their own experience, go to look after somebody else's child ego state, and then you wonder why it feels a bit yucky. Because secretly, the caregiver is saying, okay, I'll look after you, but the hidden implicit message is so that you will look after my really young child ego state.
As a child, because as a child you don't have this yet, right?
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Would you write just to know like what is that?
So this is the parent ego state, adult. This is the child ego state. I'm going to write it out here. And this is called second order structural analysis. So second order structural analysis, meaning the child ego state is, or the archaeopsyche, that's the word I like to prefer, is then further subdivided. And this is quite important, quite helpful for me when I'm holding space. C1 is known as, so that's the really young child, day 1, quite yet, say to up to a year, let's say, depends on your whose model of development. This is known as the somatic child. So the child that knows through the soma, through the body. The adult is there, but it's not the adult that you and I are using now. It's called the little professor. Maybe you'd like to write those in on your side.
Yeah.
Somatic child.
I write in another color. So this adult in the somatic child is the
little professor. So they're working out. This is the part of us that's working out the answer to those questions we talked about in our other video. How does a person like me get along in a world like this with people like you? And it's this adult, it's called the A1, little professor. The C1 is the somatic child. And the child that is it's the body ego, the physical body ego. And then the P1 in the child, it's got different names from Eric Berne. Pig parent is one of them.
Pig parent.
Pig parent. Or the fairy godmother. That would have been my one.
The fairy?
Fairy godmother. So when I'm a mum, I will never treat my children the way I was treated. So then I compensated as a parent and created a whole other set of challenges and gaps for my children. So
that is the example I shared about my mother and grandmother, right?
Here you go.
That my grandmother, she's really, she's more far away of hugging and more like stiff and distant, physically distant. And I from the stories I heard from my mother, she didn't had so much affection and touch and physical touch. So it was this distance, this far away. And my mother she compensate totally different by when raising me and my brother, to try to not be as her mother, and going to the opposite. Try to.
Well, you said smother you. You felt
drawing,
drowning,
suffocating, invading, overprotection. I was writing today. I found this word, overprotection, taking care so much about everything.
Overprotective. You don't learn your yes.
Yeah.
Well, what you've just confirmed this theory that when she was little, really young, she probably did not get the holding.
Not at all.
So then she cuts that off in her. Well, no, she cut the whole child ego state, and then she longs for, but doesn't explicitly ask, please take care of my really young, wounded self. And you said you could feel it. You felt it energetically. So this is the diagram of symbiosis.
And I have more questions about the example of how this represents in life. Like, how is the outside perspective or outside behaviors that this is happening in their relationship?
So then that probably links to the other video we want to do. This is a rescuer. And I haven't thought about it this way. And probably persecutor. They've cut off their own child ego state, and they use their parent. Yeah, that's my hypothesis at the minute. So it looks like drama triangle, because this person's not taking care of their own needs, their own feelings, and they're putting their attention on somebody, looking after somebody else, or telling them what to do. You need to do it like this. So the language in transactional analysis is we have an excluded ego state, or the other one is constant, when someone is constantly in their parent.
And when this child grow, and then this child started to have an adult and a parent ego state, what happens?
I think you know the answer to that.
I discovered more clear a bit in the process. I try to put words on it. I think what I observe in myself is that I have the tendency to reply that, because here I'm not taking care of this child ego state in me that didn't have the space and the basic needs, and then I have the tendency of doing that with others. Like I have the tendency to repeat that in a partnership relationship, for example,
in
getting
reverse.
away.
Yes.
What, like having totally resistance to repeat that.
Yeah.
So it's like ping pong.
Yeah.
It's what the dream revealed, that I wanted to all the time get away.
Yeah.
So repeat my grandma.
Yeah. Exactly.
And how is that reveals in, would you say more about in the relationship between couples?
Yeah, well, giving centers to each other. And this person is likely to anticipate this person's needs. So this person will then not have to ask for what they want and be vulnerable, because it will already have been anticipated if this person's the rescuer.
Could you give an example of that?
Well, my grandma and granddad were very traditional gender roles. So granddad went out to work, and his dinner was on the table when he came home. Like, he never had to think about food or the kitchen. I hardly ever heard him ask for anything, because grandma took care of all that. It's not the best example relationally. So if I think of someone who's a predominant rescuer in a relationship, they'll look after the other person until they get premenstrual, and then, you know, the numbness bar starts lowering for a lot of women in premenstrually. They start feeling things, and then that's when the switch happens, because after all I've done for you, this is the after all I've done for you, and you can't even guess what I need. You didn't even think about what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get this big this tangle mess.